All right, welcome to this week's version of the Wendt Show, featuring this week only Jonah Wendt. Luke Ayers and Manford are out of town. They will join us again next week. This week we are joined in studio by Caitlin O'Shea of Wyoming and Chris Fales, who's running for House District 122 in San Antonio, Texas. The Wendt Show does not endorse political candidates, however we do enjoy talking to them. So Kat, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, as Jonah said, I'm Kat O'Shea. I'm from Jackson, Wyoming, and I'm a senior here at Trinity University. And this summer I interned with the NRA. I'm very into hunting, very into gun issues. So I'm going to go ahead and talk with Chris about some of that.
All right, Kat, how do you personally identify?
I identify as a libertarian.
Fine. All right, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself? Who is Chris Fales?
My name's Chris Fales. I am the mayor in Hollywood Park, Texas, and I own a gun store called Alamo Shooting Sports, and I'm in my final year of law school at St. Mary's at 42 years old. You do not need to stop learning, I will tell you that. And I am currently one of two people running in the Republican primary for House District 122.
All right. Chris, who do you see yourself aligning with who's maybe more of a big-name politician? Nowadays, you hear a lot of conservatives when they run for office say, I'm Ronald Reagan. I run in the footsteps of Ronald Reagan. I see myself as a Ronald Reagan conservative. How do you see yourself personally?
And I understand why a lot of people say that Ronald Reagan, I mean, he's been the torchbearer, but at the same time, the National Firearms Act was passed under the Reagan administration, and he did sign it. So I would say that I align myself more with a Rand Paul. Not a Ron Paul, more of a Rand Paul. A little more, I guess, libertarian-leaning Republican type of leader. But at the same time, I wouldn't go that far with Ron Paul. So I guess that's a good balance with it.
Kat, you seem to really appreciate Chris's political alignment there. What do you think about Rand Paul?
Oh, I love Rand Paul. I think he's great. I mean, I'm definitely libertarian, so I like that side. I do like Ron Paul as well, but I think that I differ from a lot of libertarians in that I still usually, not always, but on principle, I'll still support military interventionism.
So the intervening libertarian.
Yeah.
The aggressive libertarian.
I feel I'm libertarian domestically.
I want you to have freedom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, more complicated than that, but yeah, I'm more libertarian domestically. But I think that's an interesting question. Who do you align yourself with? Because I think aside from I align myself with Reagan, whatever. I think we're in a really interesting time right now where people that are running for office in these midterms, there's almost seems to be like a dichotomy of, are you a Trump guy or not a Trump guy? And I think it's getting a little bit lost that you don't have to be one or the other. Mm-hmm. So that's also why I like to answer a little bit.
Well, I see right now, I think you really have three lanes. In the past, you had people who run as, I'm a moderate, common sense Republican. You had people who ran as, I'm a conservative. And now you have people who run as a Trump person. So you have three lanes versus the normal two. Chris, how do you really see yourself fitting into that dichotomy?
I call myself a conservative because what I look at, I believe, are true conservative values back to more of the founding ideas of the country. And it saddens me that I think these labels get tossed around, and a lot of politicians love to say, I'm a conservative. And then you look at their voting record and you're like, but that's not conservatism. And so I guess I really don't like those labels. I mean, you look at my mailers that I send out, I say I'm conservative. But you also look at a lot of people that I call the liberal wing of the Republican Party, and they claim that they're conservative too.
Right.
So
that was one thing I really enjoyed about Ted Cruz when he ran for president back in 2016. Is he said, I'm a conservative today, I'll be a conservative tomorrow. I've gone to Washington, I fought the battles, and I'm still a conservative. You have people who come in every year and say, I'm going to be a conservative. They get to Washington, D.C., and they lose their conservative principles. They sell out the establishment.
Jonah never misses an opportunity to plug Ted Cruz.
Well, one thing that you have to remember is anytime you get in that legislative area, there's going to be these team of lobbyists with every special interest and every major company coming around and saying, you need to vote this way on this, you need to vote this way on this. And there's a trap that even some good people get sucked into where they start making those bad votes. And that's why this is one thing that I tell people all the time. In my Christian faith, I have that person who I call my accountability partner. It's that person that will call you up and say, hey, have you been reading the Bible? You've been praying, did you have your quiet time yesterday? And it's not a one-way street. It's my job to do the same thing to him. But it's also important to look to other people that are in that legislative area already and find those people who are not selling out, who haven't given up their values, and pull them in and say, okay, will you be that person? Will you be my conscience up there? So whenever these people start pulling on me and they come and they're telling me one side of the coin and it sounds really good, I need that person who's going to come in there and go, Chris, look, remember, you promised you were going to vote this way. This is what you said you were going to do. And, they kind of snap you back to reality. Because it's people, I don't care how strong your backbone is, how good of a moral compass you have, the noise will get to you sometimes and things will sound like they make sense. And that's why you always need that.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so if you are elected and do get to serve as the House District Rep for 122, what bills do you see yourself supporting? Is there any issue you really think we need to tackle in the next legislative cycle?
I have been around and I've knocked on over 1,700 doors in House District 122 myself. Not to mention, there's a team of volunteers on the ground as we're sitting here talking that are knocking doors and reporting back to me on what people are saying. And what I'm really hearing is the property tax issue is going to be the number one issue. Governor Abbott called a special session last time around, and one of the major issues that he had on the table to address was property tax reform. And unfortunately in the House, there was a weak property tax bill. It really, honestly, even call it a bill was giving it more credit than what it had. And there were several legislators lined up to put up amendments to say, here, we're going to cap the growth of property taxes. We're going to do this, do that. And you had this left side of the aisle group that proposed to end the debate, which once you end the debate, none of those amendments can be brought up. And they voted to end the debate and actually closed a special session early in the House, and it kept anything from being done for meaningful property tax reform.
Yeah, property taxes are a huge issue. We see people getting priced out of their houses because they retire, they have a steady income, or their income becomes static being on Medicare or Medicaid Social Security, and the price of their house goes up each year, and you can't afford to keep paying that.
All right, I've already said that I support Governor Abbott's plan, which puts a 2.5% growth, puts a cap at 2.5% of growth. Now, that doesn't guarantee that your property taxes will only go up 2.5%. A city can still come and say, look, we have this major project, or we need to hire more police officers, or we need to build this road, or anything like that. And they can come and say, we feel like we need to raise property taxes 5% so that we can achieve this goal or meet this budget. But what that does do is it makes the city put it on a ballot. If it's such a good idea to raise your property taxes 5%, there should not be a problem with saying, okay, let's put it on the ballot. We'll let the people vote on it. And if it is a good idea, then they'll vote for that 5% increase.
Now, as mayor of Hollywood Park, does Hollywood Park collect taxes? I know it's a smaller city. What's kind of the makeup of that?
Hollywood Park is one of those towns that it's a little over 85% of its income is derived from property taxes, because previous city councils years ago, the idea was Hollywood Park wanted to stay small. It wanted to stay a small town. So it gave a lot of its extraterritorial jurisdiction, areas that could have been annexed for that town to grow as everything around it grew, to the city of San Antonio in an effort to stay small. And unfortunately, that included pretty much almost all of the commercial property around there. So while it was a good idea to keep the town small, because I mean, honestly, it's had me more in touch with the people of Hollywood Park than anywhere else because everybody there knows where my house is. I run into them at HEB. I'm going to hear from these people and I'm going to talk to them. And that's good. And so Hollywood Park, I guess my biggest aggravation was things like in our last budget session, I proposed reducing our tax rate 5%, which would have kept the effective tax rate the same. Hollywood Park would have made as much money off taxes as a year before. And unfortunately, my city council didn't agree with that idea. But there's this attitude in government that a government entity should run like a business. Mm-hmm. Whenever you're in business, you need to have a large savings for, expansion, growth, things that you want to do in the future, and you want to maximize your profit. The problem with applying the businessman theory to government is that government should not be in a situation where it has a massive savings account. Government should not be looking to maximize its profit off what it does. Because if you're maximizing profit, you have too much in savings, you're obviously taking too much from the citizens of that town. And that's the big dichotomy between business and government, in my opinion.
I mean, I think kind of going off of that, something that libertarians talk about a lot is that the issue with, in that case, the government running like a business in that way is that the government doesn't have the fail mechanism that a business does. If a business is not providing at basically exactly what the population wants them to, they'll fail. And with the government, there's not that failure mechanism. So if they do poorly, you can be voted out, but it's not the same mechanism as failing. The money doesn't go away in a lot of ways. And so I think that is like a very libertarian view on that as well.
And there is a fail mechanism for cities in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
If you are not providing the basic resources to the people of a community, the state of Texas does have the power to come and pull your charter. Mm-hmm. And you're no longer a city.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is, I don't know of a time that it's been used, but there is a fail mechanism in there where basically the state can step in and say, you're not doing your job, you're out of here.
Yeah.
And it's something that can be used to hold city officials' feet to the fire. Mm-hmm. The problem is we've ended up in a situation where local control in some ways goes a little bit too far in controlling people's lives. And people talk about, a city is its own government. Well, no, city and county governments are allotted portions from the state of Texas. They are designated by the state of Texas to handle a job at a local level. And there needs to be a check at the state level because sometimes local control and local liberty are two things that they have to be held in balance with each other. And like one of my prime examples is San Antonio's tree ordinance, where if a business buys a piece of property and they want to put a business on there, they have to leave 40% of the trees on that property. And Hollywood Park doesn't have that ordinance. But so there's a restaurant that came in to Hollywood Park, came in on an undeveloped piece of property. They clear cut it, built their restaurant, and then planted trees on it.
Yeah.
And, that's something you have to think about with any business. If I'm in business and I want people to come and spend their dollars on my business, I'm going to want it to be attractive and people to want to come. So that means you're going to landscape it, plant trees, that sort of thing. And you don't need a government entity like me as a mayor and the city council around me coming to you and saying, okay, well, because we want trees on this property, I'm going to tell you what you're going to leave, what you're not going to leave. Because businesses understand we want customers. We need to plant trees. We need our business to be attractive.
It's already incentivized.
That kind of leads me into my next question. Over the past few years, we've seen a lot of sparring between Governor Abbott and the state government and local city governments such as Austin, San Antonio, whether that be over immigration recently in San Antonio, fracking across the state in plastic bags. So what rights do cities have? I know you're in law school right now. Can you kind of talk more about the relationship that cities have with the state government?
The cities Their main purpose of the city is local police, local fire control, local street repair, local parks, that sort of thing. Everything outside of that is something that's decided by the voters that they want in that town. And then the biggest problem is you have a lot of city elections are held in May, whenever people are out of town, people are on vacation. A lot of people don't pay attention to those elections. And, that's one thing I love about Hollywood Park, our small town. Everybody knows whenever there's an election and they all show up. But the city of San Antonio, it's so big, and a lot of times people don't go and vote in these major city elections. And you end up with a very small subset of the population of that town electing officials who come in and they create rules that really infringe on just your average homeowner or average business person trying to make it in that town.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the state legislature is there to act as a stopgap. Just like we have a constitution at the federal level that says, okay, these are where powers are reserved, everything is down to the state. And then the state says, okay, we're going to abdicate our authority down to this city government, but we're only going to give these rights out there. And that's whenever things have to go backwards. You look at the fracking ban that was passed in Denton, and you're now, how much, you now look, there's millions of cubic feet and millions of MCF of natural gas under the town of Denton, Texas. Whenever they passed that fracking ban, they basically went in and with eminent domain took everybody's minerals underneath that town from them without any kind of, without paying them for that, without any kind of reimbursement to the people who own those minerals. So that's where you need a balance. Yes, cities need to be able to control where somebody drills an oil well. It's not right for me to go to right next door to an elementary school and set up a drilling rig. That is common sense local control. But just to flat out say nobody can access any of their minerals under my town. No, now you're going a little bit too far here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one way I've really heard it described is that local government is stuff that annoys you on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Like potholes, zoning, that kind of stuff. Whereas the federal and state government is stuff that it annoys you in your head, but it doesn't actually make your day worse.
Right.
Unless you get headaches or migraines from tax increases, which some of us might. Kat, you might get migraines from tax increases. So, Kat, you interned last summer with the NRA up in D.C. Why don't we talk a little bit about guns? I know you wrote an op-ed about campus carry that really went viral. You had an interview on Fox News, I believe.
Yeah, on Barney and Co.
Barney and Co.
No, Fox Business. Not the main line.
You still made it. I know it was read by thousands and thousands, maybe even a million people, so that was quite the accomplishment.
So I interned for the Institute for Legislative Action at the NRA. And the piece Jonah's talking about was a in support of campus carry. It's kind of an opinion piece. I was wondering what you think about that, because I think even within the gun owner community and the pro-Second Amendment community, it is almost split on that issue, which I think is very interesting.
I don't see a lot of split on that issue. I actually, because St. Mary's Law is a private university, so therefore they still have the right to ban carry on campus.
So is Trinity, yeah.
So as soon as that bill passed, San Antonio sent out a nice little letter via the student email to everyone saying, oh, by the way, we know there's campus carry, but it's not here. You're not allowed to carry on campus. So I went and actually talked to two of the deans of the law school and expressed my disdain for their choice. And I knew I was going to be laying my thoughts on deaf ears, but I felt like I needed to stand up for it. At the end of the day, mass shootings by far tend to happen in gun-free zones.
Yeah.
Anytime you say a gun cannot be carried in this place, you are creating a soft target for somebody who wants to hurt people.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what our UT and A&M campuses were becoming. They were becoming large soft targets because nobody could have a gun there. You look at response time, even university police response time, you're still looking at 5-10 minutes, probably longer, because they're going to be getting set up and analyzing the situation before they just dive right in. Where an armed student, someone could come in the back of the room, and as soon as the first 2 shots are fired, turn around and take out that person. The amount of rounds the person could put off in 5 minutes is astronomical. The amount of death that can be caused. Most of these mass shootings happen in less than 5 minutes. So, to say, no, nobody carry a gun, well, okay, so how many more people need to die before somebody comes in and can end this problem whenever one of those students can't take care of the problem themselves?
I agree. I'd say the 2 main, just reading the comments on my article and response I got to it, the 2 main kind of counter arguments I got. One was from the anti-gun lobby, I'd say, that would basically, it was kind of the old argument of another person with a gun in a situation, in a mass shooting situation, will not help. They're going to injure other people. They're going to, or they're, maybe going to pop off and kill people themselves, which I find pretty easy to debate. But the other argument I got from within, I think, even the pro-gun lobby, which was gun owners that were saying, I'm all for having guns, but think about kids in college, think about them drinking, think about frat houses. That whole culture is not conducive to gun owners. And I was wondering what you would think about that as well. I obviously don't agree, but...
Well, I mean, that's painting college students with a pretty broad brush. So you're basically telling me that everybody that goes to a university is basically a frat boy from Animal House? I mean, is that really what you're saying? I'm sorry, I've got 2 college students sitting in front of me, and neither one of them are wearing a toga right now. I don't see a bottle of alcohol. I don't see a bong sitting on the desk over there. I mean... Good
thing we hit it.
There's a lot.
I mean, Kat, you are libertarian.
You're painting people with a broad brush. At the end of the day, to purchase a weapon, you cannot be an illegal drug user. Otherwise, you're automatically kicked out of the system. Number 2, if you have a license to carry and you're carrying and you have a drop of alcohol in your system, you're breaking the law there. And the argument that I kept hearing was, think about an 18-year-old college kid. 18-year-old college kids aren't allowed to have a pistol anyway. You got to be 21. So, 99% of the arguments that I heard against campus carry didn't add up to the truth anyway.
Yeah, at least didn't seem substantial enough to deprive civil liberties, constitutional rights.
Yeah, I noticed the company actually came out with a chainsaw attachment after that, just as a joke. I don't know if anybody's bought one. I think a couple of people bought one as a joke, but yeah.
That's funny. So how's it? So one of the things that I helped do at ILA this summer was looking into the midterm elections, and one of the things that the NRA does is, you might know, grades A through F candidates based on their gun policies. And it's not a partisan thing, so, you can be a communist, and as long as you're absolutely pro-guns, you get an A. Do you know if you have, I didn't look it up, do you know if you have a grade yet?
I do. Whenever you have not served in the legislature before, your grade always ends with a Q after it, because it's questionable, because you haven't had a chance to be in the legislature and prove. I do have a problem with the NRA and the Texas State Rifle Association's grading system. I have a big problem with it. You have a situation right now in my district where you have a legislator that has what they call hero point, doesn't have any what they call hero points, and that is proposing a bill, going out and fighting for a bill, but yet has not voted bad on guns.
Yeah.
It's called an incumbent rule. Meanwhile, they have a person running for that position that one of the things I did after becoming mayor was rip the 3006 signs, the 3007 signs off the door of City Hall. I actually got it passed through our city council as a resolution that open carry and concealed carry was allowed in every city council meeting. I mean, after all, if somebody wants to shoot the mayor, they just have to wait till after the council meeting's over and I walk out the front door.
Now, for those who don't know, what is 306 and 307? 30.06 is the law that has to be stated on signs before you walk in a building stating that you cannot conceal carry. And 30.07 is the law that has to be stated on a sign in a certain way to let you know that you cannot open carry within the doors of that business. And so, while I'm a person who I am prepared to file the bill and fight for the bill to get constitutional carry in the state of Texas. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I really want to do is I want to pass a Texas Hearing Protection Act.
Yeah.
Because if Colorado can thumb their nose at the federal government and say, you may say that marijuana is illegal, but we're going to allow it anyway. California can thumb their nose and say, I know marijuana is illegal, but we're going to have recreational use anyway. Oh, what is wrong with the state of Texas saying, the federal government says that people have to go through all these steps for a suppressor? We're going to go ahead and say anyway. Yeah, it's okay.
So what would you say in terms of the couple, I know you brought up the Hearing Protection Act, doing, doing constitutional carry, doing reciprocity. What would you say if you had one bill to fight for, gun-wise?
Reciprocity?
Reciprocity, national reciprocity is, so as of now, you have, if you have a concealed carry license, certain states will honor the concealed carry license of other states, concealed carry permit, and certain states will not. No. So right now, if you get one, you have to figure out which states will honor it and which ones won't, and you could potentially be illegally carrying. No. What the reciprocity bill would do is make it behave more like a driver's license. Or a marriage license. So if you have one in any state, it has to be honored by other states. And I think that this could actually be good for people living in oppressive states because certain states...
Mind you, for cat, oppressive is like taxes.
But, people living in places where it's very difficult to get a concealed carry permit, you could go get an out-of-state permit, and then it would have to be honored.
Well, I want to go back to the previous question, though, about the NRA endorsements.
Oh, yeah.
Because my opponent, while he has not hurt the pro-gun agenda, he has never fought for anything.
So he's just kind of fallen in line, but he hasn't been proactive.
But because of that, even though I have an AQ rating, the top rating that someone could get who hasn't served in the legislature before, my opponent gets the endorsement. Even though he has 0 hero points. He's never fought for it at all.
Yeah.
And you have somebody coming in that's like, I'm going to challenge these pro-gun legislatures because I want to be the top pro-gun legislature in the Capitol.
Yeah.
That the person that is saying that isn't going to get the endorsement.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely. That is definitely and it is difficult. I mean, in your case, it seems very obvious that you would be very pro-gun, but I know it was difficult for me working there, figuring this stuff out, because sometimes all you have to go on are people's 3 tweets from someone, and you have to try to determine a grade off of that. But that is an interesting commentary on the system.
And you take somebody who's been extremely pro-gun in the Texas House.
Yeah.
And if they decide that they want to run for Texas Senate, that same rule still applies. And if that state senator hasn't hurt the gun agenda in any way, the pro-gun agenda in any way, they'll still get the endorsement, even though you may have someone who has fought and filed every pro-gun bill that made it through the House.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
They won't get the endorsement going for the Senate.
That's very interesting. Yeah. I guess the only other thing I'd say on that is that if you have someone, you have a race in which it's someone with, an A or a B plus or whatever against an AQ, I think it's probably, I can't speak for what the NRA is going to do in every case, but I think it would probably be unlikely that they would get financially involved in a race like that. Because
Right.
usually I think they do like an A versus an F. They'll get involved, A versus a D, that kind of thing. It's a lot more likely that they're going to get involved in that because they see it as more critical, you know?
But no, I think, but back to your question now, after we've been through that, of
Yeah.
what's the most important bill to get passed?
Yeah.
Reciprocity is obviously outside the hands of the state
Yeah.
legislature, but I believe constitutional carry is absolutely required. If someone can legally own a gun, if they haven't committed a felony, they don't beat their spouse, they should have the right to.
Yeah.
You should have the right to go in once you clear the background check. Walk over to the next aisle, buy the holster. Next aisle, buy a box of rounds, load it up, and go protect yourself.
Yeah. I totally agree.
So, Kat, you don't no objections to carrying a firearm as a libertarian?
I know, it's surprising.
What obviously you'd fight for gun rights in the Texas House. What other bills would you focus on? What other issues are important to Chris Fales?
Obviously, border security is a big issue that I have. One thing that resonates in my mind is there were 12 illegal immigrants who were being smuggled from Laredo to San Antonio.
So now they've determined it's smuggling, not trafficking.
Oh, it's trafficking. Right.
So
Well, there's the difference is if you pay for the move, then it's trafficking. If someone is secretly carrying
So
you.
it's consent versus not consent.
Right. And this was a consensual haul, so therefore it is smuggling and not trafficking. Those 12 people were turned over to the Catholic Charities, who basically gave them clothing, food, and water. Most of them refused it, and then turned them loose. The problem with that is they were never vetted. There was never okay, is this someone that was deported in the past because they committed a crime? Is this someone that's a known criminal in Guatemala trying to come into the U.S.? I don't have a problem with the guy that lives outside Monterey on a farm and he knows that his kids are going to be pulled into working for the cartels if he stays in Monterey and wants to come to America for a better life. Our doors are open to people like that. But we need to have that stopgap. We need to have some way where we're checking who is coming into this country. Who are you? What if, do we know of anything that you've done in the past that's going to create a danger for the people in this country? And whenever a law enforcement agency doesn't bother to at least go that far with a check, at least have immigration do that check, and then let's issue them a green card so that they have a number, they are paying income taxes, they're doing the things that the rest of us as Americans are doing. Right. And then they can be sure to apply for citizenship, and once they go through the steps of citizenship, they can even vote in our elections.
Yeah.
But there's a right and a wrong way to do it. If someone is coming across the Rio Grande River in the middle of the night and getting in the back of an 18-wheeler to get to where they're going, that's not the right way. They need to be funneled through a checkpoint at a bridge. Okay, who are you? What are you here to do? Let's give me your fingerprints so we can run it through the system. Be sure you're good. And then here's your green card. Welcome to the United States. We're going to welcome you here with open arms. But we've got to have that vetting.
So you would support a system in which it would be easier to get on the path to citizenship, to get a green card, but there would be more vetting so you don't have completely undocumented people coming in.
Right. The idea, even on the left side, they call them undocumented immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
The day I was born, there was a birth certificate issued for me. There was a social security number issued for me. I've been documented my whole life. People that are in a country are documented.
Mm-hmm.
Just for law enforcement purposes, if you get pulled over or you get accused of a crime, there needs to be some kind of identification that we track that crime back to say, okay, Kat did this. Kat's wanted for this. We can find Kat because we can run her through the system.
Can't say I'd be too surprised when that happens.
But at the same time, if someone from another country is coming here, we need that same kind of stopgap. Now, yes, we are a country of immigrants, and I'm fine with, on a controlled basis, we need to allow people into this country. I like the idea of even a merit-based system of people coming into this country. There needs to be some some level of control over
Yeah.
immigration, but I'm not saying let's just open it up and everybody that can pass the background check just come on in. There needs to be
Yeah.
some level, but
So
I don't have a
more
problem
than
with
frat
it.
party.
Yeah,
Right.
a little bit
More
more.
than a frat party. Now, you mentioned background checks for people who enter the country illegally. How would that actually work? Do we actually, like, I know a lot of these people are coming from countries where their legal system isn't in the best shape, their government system's most of the time barely functioning. So how would we be able to figure out who they actually are, given that their countries might not know who they are?
And a lot of people from Latin America go by multiple names, and you like that situation here in San Antonio. Whenever they came out of the back of that truck, and the police officer said, "Okay, what's your name?" There's no guarantee they're giving you the right name.
Yeah.
So immigration, what they've done is they will go and they will fingerprint somebody, and they will run it through the database of certain countries to try to figure that out. And yes, there's going to be holes in that system, but at least now their fingerprints are on file with us. So now if someone does commit a crime, we can run it through. Just like whenever I got my real estate license, whenever I got my license to carry, all those, I had to be fingerprinted. Those fingerprints are in the government database now. If I go and I rob a store and my fingerprints are pulled, they know, okay, that's Chris Fales' fingerprint. Let's go find Chris Fales.
Yeah, I think I see it as a two-part issue. One, you have the rule of law. You have to, there has to be, if you're going to have a law, you need to follow it.
Right.
And if you're going to have a nation like we do, you have to have rules that everyone follows, but everyone follows, everyone plays by. And then it's also a humanitarian issue. We have people who are getting in 18-wheelers that are 110, 120 degrees to get over here, and that's just not safe. You also have other issues on the southern border that we won't get into here, but if you took it, it would definitely look like a human rights fight. Like, there are human rights being violated on the southern border just by the manner that people have to, the things that people have to engage in to get here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I also think, for me personally, any discussion of, stopping illegal immigration also needs to come with a discussion about opening up and just declogging legal immigration, because it's so backlogged, and I think that's one area where the federal government has proved pretty inefficient in that area, and that needs to be streamlined, because people should be able to get here legally. And I'm okay with, I like a merit-based system, whatever. But if there's no path to get here legally because it's so backlogged, it's going to be a lot harder to enforce and cut down on illegal immigration, especially in a compassionate way.
But at the end of the day, there are some people that just need to be told no.
Yeah,
there are bad people. We shouldn't take bad people. What do you guys think about the current DACA situation going on in D.C.?
I think, from a political perspective, I think Trump's looking pretty weak on it right now. I personally, I'm not sure that there's a right answer with DACA right now with the situation that we're in, because you either have to deport a bunch of people that have been here, are in American culture, most of them are college educated, they're doing really well. You either have to deport those people, or you let them stay. Does that set a precedent? It's a difficult question, I think. I think that President Trump is not negotiating, which is funny because I always call him like the great negotiator, but I don't think he's negotiating properly, even with the government shutdown, to get what he needs to get in exchange for DACA. Because I think the whole thing with DACA is you need to get a lot in exchange, and a couple billion for the wall, that's nothing. It's basically nothing in exchange.
Well, I think one thing we have to look at is history. When Ronald Reagan gave amnesty back when he was president, that essentially legalized millions of Democratic voters, and that supposedly slung the state of California from being a Republican state to a Democratic state. And so I think that the best path forward is to give them green cards and let them stay, and then maybe let them vote in a few years, but not immediately.
Yeah, but I think that's flawed, because I don't think it's a good precedent to set, saying I'm going to base my policy on, especially immigration policy or foreign policy, and on I don't want the other side to have more votes. That's a strategic move, and you should be dealing with this in... No, I don't think it is. I think it should be based on the correct thing to do, the right thing to do. If it's the right thing to do to let the dreamers stay, I'm not sure if it is or not. But if it's the right thing to do, and you say it's the right thing to do, but I'm not going to do it because they're all going to vote Democrat, that makes you,
that's what's
not
happening
right.
on the Democratic side of the
Yeah.
coin. What is happening with them is look at the Democratic Party. The only time they stand up for Hispanic people is whenever it comes to them being able to vote.
Yeah.
The only time they stand up for illegal immigration is at the voting booth.
Yeah.
If they really wanted to take care of the poor people in this country, it would be deregulation, open up business, let business thrive so that there's a job out there for them. And instead, it's now of let's stifle this, let's push that back, more government control that downturns the economy. The Dow has gone up 44% since Trump took office. And I firmly believe that it has a lot to do with his policies on removing regulation, the new tax plan.
I agree.
You look at half the employed people in this country are probably getting a raise because of the new tax plan.
Yeah.
And they think, meanwhile, the Democrats aren't lauding this. This is companies raising the minimum wage that they pay their employees, not government stepping in and saying, we're going to raise the minimum wage. It's companies saying, thank you for doing the tax plan. We're going to raise our minimum wage, which means the disenfranchised people, the uneducated people, are going to be making more money now. That's who they say that they fight for, but they're mad at the policy that's going to give them more money.
Well, $1,000 is just breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
But obviously it doesn't affect these people.
According to Debbie Wasserman
It's
Schultz
just
and Nancy Pelosi,
Yeah, it's just $1,000.
Well, I totally agree with you that the Democrats are doing this for political gain and to get those votes. But I think that we should decide independently whether or not it's the right thing to do instead of trying to fight that, because we don't want to sink to that level.
Well, remember, Kat,
that's all I'm saying.
You're a libertarian. We actually enjoy the prospect of potentially winning an election.
Hey, now.
And also, DACA is just people who came over here as a child. It's not that they got a college education.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these DACA or Dreamer kids, that they want to call them, they're illegal immigrants living in the inner city, part of MS-13. People they love to carry that one dreamer that happened to make it through the system and graduate from Harvard and go, this is who you're kicking out of the country.
Yeah.
Well,
but
you have to paint everyone with a broad brush, just like all college students and drug using alcoholics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is not a broad brush. There are bad people here who are staying in this country because of DACA.
Certainly. I certainly think that's true. I mean, I think with DACA it is nuanced. I think there are bad people in MS-13 that are here that are dreamers. I think there's also, there are dreamers that have families that are productive productive members of society that you'd be kicking out. And I guess for me, I don't know how I feel about DACA, to be completely honest. I'm pretty split. I haven't really figured it out yet.
Well, a good measure, I think, would be to see who's actually within that group applied for citizenship and is actually going through the motions to become a citizen.
Certainly.
The other day, they showed on the news this man that had a wife that was a U.S. citizen. His kids were born here, and he was being deported after being in the country 30 years. But he was told several times, even under the Obama administration, hey, you need to get this paperwork in. You need to get this paperwork done. And he never did that.
Yeah.
But the news media and what you read in the paper is just, oh, we're kicking this guy out, even though he's had a family and he's been here 30 years. But he hasn't followed the steps. I'm sorry, but if I hadn't paid my income taxes for 30 years, I wouldn't be with my family right now. I would be behind bars.
Certainly.
So there's things that you have to do as a member of a society. And this person never bothered to go through and file the paperwork and things that you do whenever you're in a society.
That is kind of one of the interesting differences between Barack Obama and Donald Trump, is that Barack Obama actually deported more people than Barack Obama has deported more people than Donald Trump has so far.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the branding of it. It's just different branding.
Where do you stand on school choice?
I believe that the money needs to follow the child. At the end of the day, I look at, there are families that they live in a failing school district, or you have one of the prime examples that I know of is the single mom who's working an hourly wage job because it's the best that she can do. And God bless her for doing that. But she's a Christian woman, and she wants her child to go to a school where they pray. Wants her child to go to a Christian school. Well, with her financial situation, she's not able to send her child to a Christian school. But somewhat of means, someone who's actually done well in their life, they can pay the tuition, send their child to a Christian school if they want to, or some STEM school if their kid's really good at math. They want them to go to this college prep school over here. Well, I don't believe that the choice of a Christian education, the choice of a STEM education, or the choice of a parent wanting to say, I would like my child to receive this curriculum, should only be reserved for those with deep pockets. Mm-hmm. If the money follows the child, and the parent is in control of that child's education, then that child is going to get the education that their parent desires for them. The parent should be in control. Where right now, that single mother working an hourly wage job is told by the state, your kid is going to go to this school, they're going to receive this curriculum, and this is how it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one way that I really look at it is that the rich already have school choice.
Right.
If you're rich, you can move, you can pay the tuition.
Yeah.
You can jump through the loopholes you have to. You can sign off power of attorney to a friend or a relative. You can do what you need to do to get your child to the school that you want them to go to, but poor people don't have that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And we see this reflected when it comes to income mobility, and education kind of sets the foundation for someone's life.
Right.
If I hadn't had the educational opportunities I did growing up, I probably wouldn't be here.
That's true. And the way you're raised really describes how you're going to live the rest of your life. And I think it's very important that these parents have that choice. And the biggest argument I hear against school choice is, no, you're giving a tax break to the rich because the poor are still going to have to send their kid to the public school because of the bus service. I'm sorry, but whenever I was growing up, I had two grandparents and my parents and other family members, money coming from four ways to pay for me to go to a private school. My dad worked at Pure Later Courier. My mother was a checkout girl at Kmart. So my dad's a delivery driver. My mom was working at checkout. We were living in a used mobile home. But my family still found a way to get me to that school. Mm-hmm. And if you have the influx of students that I believe school choice would give to some of these Christian schools in some of the poor areas of our communities, you're going to see these private schools start going out and buying 15-passenger vans and going around picking up the kids and getting them to the school. It's a self-correcting issue. Mm-hmm. Let the free market be in control. And trust me, they will find a way to get those kids to the school.
Yeah, certainly.
Another thing I see is parental investment. One of the issues at the high school that I went to a public high school in Fort Worth, is that the parents weren't involved at all. Maybe 3 or 4 kids got picked up by the parents each day. The PTSA was incredibly small. The board that made up the PTSA did not reflect the diverse student body. And overall, parents weren't involved. I think that school choice would get parents more involved in the decision-making process. Instead of just getting a letter from the government telling you your kids are going here, have them outside for the bus at this time, you can get people to invest in the schools emotionally, physically, and sometimes even spiritually. And you can actually, I think that would make better outcomes if the parents actually involved. Because if your mom has to go through the paperwork to make sure you go to that charter school or go to the public school that's maybe the next block over instead of the one you're assigned to, when you come home, did you do your homework?
Oh, yeah. It's true with everything. The more investment you get in, the better it's going to be. And in Hollywood Park, we did a major multi-million-dollar remodel on a park, and we had email addresses for people to send in ideas of what they wanted to see at that park. We had community input meetings, several community input meetings where people would just come and say, I want to see the pool be a 6-lane instead of a 4-lane, or I want a walking trail, or I want a garden where I can go and sit and read. And all of that was given to the architect, and they put as many of those ideas as they could possibly fit into that. And it gave the community buy-in, where now you have a community that is extremely pleased with the result, rather than a city council coming together and deciding, okay, this is what we want the park to look like, or one small group assigned.
To do it.
Right. And this way, if you get that buy-in, if people have a choice in how it comes out,
We'll cut that out.
if you have people with a choice and people know that their voice will actually make a difference, then you're going to get buy-in. Right now, that parent-teacher group, the teachers don't see a reason to get involved because you're going to have a school board come up with the curriculum that's passed down, and this is the curriculum it's going to be. But if you have school choice and you're able to go to that school and say, no, this is how our education system needs to work. This is what's going to happen. And now they have to listen to you, because if you pull that kid out, that money leaves that public school, there actually going to be some buy-in. There's actually going to, these comments coming from parents, the schools are going to have to listen to that and actually take it to heart.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to you as mayor. What are your greatest accomplishments, do you feel, or what do you feel like your greatest accomplishments were as mayor of Hollywood Park?
The greatest accomplishments, number one, was for 20 years we had talked about redoing Voigt Park. It was a great park. It was donated by the Voigt family, which that Hollywood Park sits on the old Voigt Ranch. And it was a great park, but it had outlived its useful life. It needed to be remodeled. It needed something done. So we had these community input meetings. A councilman, David Neugbauer, actually took control of that project. He was really the driving force that once we broke ground on that, to be sure everything got done under budget, on time. And then we had to pass a bond to get that done. And what we did is we looked at the venue fund, because there's a certain amount of taxes, of the sales tax that come in, that have to be spent on venues within that town. And so we looked at what, if a major depression hit this area, how much could we expect to see come into the venue fund? And we tailored that bond so that it would always be fed by that venue fund. So we weren't taking money from fire protection, from police patrol, from streets. And we tailored it that way. Now, we did do it as a property tax bond because that got us a lower interest rate. But the venue fund is what actually pays the note on that. And we were able to pass that through the city with over 90%. Over 90% of the people in that town said, yes, we want to do this and we want to spend the money on that. Mm-hmm. And now we've got a street program. In effect, we redid Donella Drive coming into the town. But one of the biggest things, too, is there were still pieces of undeveloped commercial property in a town that was founded in 1955 at the corner of 1604 and 281. There were pieces of property in the commercial district that had never been developed. Nobody had ever put a business on them. It blows my mind. But at this point now, there is no undeveloped property. There's one lot that they haven't broke ground on, but the special use permit's already been approved. Everything's already done. They will be breaking ground on it soon. So literally there's no longer undeveloped commercial property that can be bringing in sales tax revenue to help offset property taxes in the future.
So what did you do to, obviously, it seems like you increased the number of businesses in Hollywood Park. What do you think really helped build that business-friendly culture?
The lower regulations in Hollywood Park versus San Antonio steered people to Hollywood Park.
How many regulations did you get rid of?
We didn't have to get rid of any. Hollywood Park had always been a low regulation community. Hollywood Park is, I'd say the homeowners there tend to be pretty libertarian minded. They don't want to be told when to put their trash cans up, or, the fact that you can't have a ladder visible from the street and things like that. Mm-hmm. The kind of things that you see in a lot of HOA neighborhoods. Hollywood Park tends to steer away from that. They want more of that country style living. And so the fact that we didn't have those regulations allowed me to talk to businesses as they came by our city hall and said, hey, we're thinking about coming in on this lot. What do you think? And it was, let's pave the way for you.
Yeah.
We can turn around your building permit in 3 or 4 days rather than months with the city of San Antonio. Whenever you call for a building inspector to come out and approve it so you can keep working, the building inspector's out there in 24 hours, not a week later. Mm-hmm. All of these things, and the fact that we don't have a tree ordinance, the fact that there's so many things that you don't have to do in Hollywood Park that you do in San Antonio, it makes dollars and cents difference. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the idea that I want to take to the state level too. And kind of getting off of your question here, but you look at Amazon and the bid from Dallas to attract Amazon to Dallas. From what I've been told and from what I've read, it's something around like $150,000 per employee that's going to be paid to Amazon to come to Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
So is Overstock, if they decide to move their corporate office to Dallas, do they get that same deal? If Remington Firearms decides to move to Dallas, do they get the same deal?
Yeah.
If we weren't paying companies and picking and choosing who the winning company is, and we just got our tax system right and the regulations right in this state, businesses would be able to look at the dollars and cents of a lower tax, lower regulation, and say, you know what? I know Florida wants to pay us $2 million to come there, but if we go to Texas, we're not going to have to pay these and jump through these hoops for these regulations. We're going to get out of these taxes. It's actually going to be $2.5 million cheaper to build in Texas. Think about the jobs that are going to be created. Think about the personal financial wealth that will be created for the citizens of the state.
I think we've already seen this almost every time California announces a tax increase. Governor Abbott sends them a basket of gifts.
Yeah.
Because we've seen how many countless companies go, oh, California, you want to tax us more? Yeah, we're leaving. We're removing the taxes.
Right.
So what do you think? You talked about having you talked about immigration. You talked about making Texas really business friendly. How do you think what sets you apart from your opponent in this primary? What are you doing? What are you going to do that he isn't?
My opponent has pushed a lot of regulations. I believe the Young Conservatives of Texas gave him a 53 score out of a possible 100. And likes to talk in circles. One of the taxes that I see that really hurts working people the most is toll roads. And my opponent loves to brag that he was in the legislature whenever the toll roads got taken off of Highway 281. Mm-hmm. But he fails to ever let people know that in 2013 he voted for the authorization bill that put toll lanes on I-10, 281, and 1604.
Okay.
So it's just about being honest with people.
Okay.
It's about the fact that if you go to my website and you look at the issues and what I believe, that is a contract that I'm making with the people of that district. That if you vote for me and I go to Austin, this is how I'm going to vote. I'm going to be frank and upfront with you. This is how I'm going to vote. Look at these issues. Meanwhile, on my opponent's website, if you go to the issues and what he believes, I can literally go to each issue and show you where he's voted contrary to that.
Okay. So you just think consistency and honesty is what you can bring.
In principle.
Exactly.
And you're talking about being proactive with the gun issues.
Right. So there's things you have to fight for. You have to fight for the lower regulation. You have to fight for personal freedom. Mm-hmm. And not a lot of people are willing to do that fight.
Yeah.
So, Kat, are you moving to Hollywood Park anytime soon?
Yeah, maybe. Sounds great. No taxes.
I think that kind of winds it down for us today. Anybody have any final thoughts? None for you, Kat?
No, I'm good.
So you're moving to Hollywood
Thanks for
Park?
having me. We'll see. I have a lease, so and leases.
If you have if you have to spend another year here, are you gonna get an apartment up in Hollywood Park?
There's no apartments in Hollywood Park.
All right, Chris,
nice
any
mansion.
final thoughts for you?
No, thank you for having me on. It's nice being around a friendly audience.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next week.